Welcome to Free to Speak, the New Zealand Free Speech Union podcast. If you enjoy the show, subscribe for uncensored conversations and free speech news from New Zealand and beyond.
Kia ora, and welcome to Free to Speak, the official podcast of the New Zealand Free Speech Union. I'm your host today, Council Member Dane Giroux, and with us, it's quite an honour to have Kellie-Jay Keen Minchell to talk about not a pleasant anniversary. We're going to be talking about the Albert Park counter-protest that turned violent when Kellie-Jay and some women were putting on an event there. Kellie-Jay Keen, great to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Let's go back to the event. You know, what brought you over here in terms of the censorship side of things? There was a push to deny you a visa and everything by the usual suspects. And so we sort of got involved quite early in that as a union trying to push back there. So maybe we'll just set the scene and go right through the day, because I wasn't in Auckland when this happened, but it was it really went around the world. It was quite an incredible moment, and you were right in the middle of it. So yeah, maybe we'll just set the scene and go through it.
So I decided to come to your beautiful country because when I first got involved in this fight, so when I say this fight, I mean the realization that there were some people that were actively pushing the idea that men could be women, and it was right to medically abuse children with this idea of changing sex. And one of the very early stories was a school in New Zealand where a boy who claimed to be a girl was in the girls' changing rooms, in the locker rooms. And one of the girls decided, you know, she didn't really want to make too much of a fuss, but she'd then chosen to use a single stool. And then she got mercilessly bullied and then suspended because she was making this boy feel like he wasn't a girl and she didn't accept him. So that was one of the really early stories. So I knew that New Zealand was particularly bad. And I think you showed your true colours as a rather compliant nation during lockdown. And I know that, throughout the whole pandemic, New Zealanders were incredibly compliant. And there really is a relationship between how countries responded during the lockdown and how much they are willing to believe this nonsense that men can be women. So that's why New Zealand was really on my radar. And over the years, I sort of built up online relationships with women in New Zealand. And so when I did a tour of the United States in 2022, and then I decided to come to New Zealand and Australia. And in fact, I think initially it was going to be Australia, and I thought New Zealand was like it's very, very close to Australia. And I guess in comparison to here, it is. And so we decided to do that. And I did a few dates in Australia, which caused some mayhem, one might say. And I think what I saw overall is A, very desperate women, B, a huge level of silencing everywhere, and C, some really, really terrible policing. And none better illustrated than in New Zealand. And your police were horrendous. Not individual officers maybe who were eventually at the end of the park, and I think they were a bit shell-shocked, and then the officers who guarded me. But anyway, so the day we're talking about is the event in Auckland called Let Women Speak, that I organised along with some brilliant local women, and there was supposed to be another one in Wellington. And so
this was your first event, wasn't it? You'd
yeah,
only been in the country like a day or so.
New Zealand, just two. And I woke up. So on my way over. It's a very long story. I'll try and keep it quite.
Oh no, let's hear it.
So prior to coming to New Zealand, there'd been quite a few people trying to stop me. I think there was an urgent High Court injunction or something trying to stop me come over, which the Free Speech Union were very generous and supported my case. So there was that. There was a big storm in Australia when in Melbourne, some neo-Nazis had turned up to fight against the TRAs who had turned up to stop women speaking. And the neo-Nazis weren't on our side. They were just there because they knew it was going to be a big event. And it's great for their exposure, I guess. Flying over to New Zealand, I get a call from my PA that they've cancelled my hotel. So the Sofitel that I was going to stay at in Melbourne, they had cancelled my hotel. The police had gone and told them something. It was a bit weird. Like, the police had asked us our whereabouts, and then they'd gone and told people, and then they'd cancelled my reservation. So I made a reservation under a different name. I arrived in New Zealand, and I stayed in this hotel. And then overnight, someone had left an abusive message under my door. So,
Really?
yeah. Oh, yeah. I can see, we know where you are. We saw you, would describe what I was wearing. And then it was some sort of sexual violence sort of stuff. And so I was quite nervous. And also prior to me coming, the security company that we'd booked and paid for had backed out. So then, maybe a few days before I'd come to to New Zealand, I'd paid about 10,000 for another security company that came, and I think they brought about 10 people with them. And I think without them, I don't think I would have got out alive, to be quite honest.
No, I mean, those images are seared into the mind of the sheltering you as their, yeah. So was there any reason given from the first security company? Because the thing is, that's their job.
I don't think they could manage. I can't remember. I can't say I can remember too much because it was all quite urgently getting someone else. But yeah, I don't think they felt they could manage. It might have been political. Maybe it was because of the topic. But or it might look what happened. Maybe they were right.
Maybe they were short-staffed and just thought they got it. It came through on the wind that it was going to be a bigger event. And
so that
stuff.
already kind of made me nervous. And I fortunately, most of this is on video. And I get in the car with a couple of the security, and I'm in the car, and I say, for the first time, I feel really unsafe. Like, I just it felt very ominous. And I'd been to many places where that had turned quite ominous, but I hadn't known beforehand, but I did. There was something that I just knew. And then when I got to the edge of the park, I don't think I quite realized that it was all TRAs. So Albert Park has got a rotunda in the middle, and we were speaking there, and the women had already set up. And what I had assumed is that the police were kind of around the perimeter of the rotunda, because we'd worked with them, like local women had worked with the police, and we'd had assurances that everything would be safe, and they'd done that for weeks.
So they thought they had They thought they had a plan.
Yeah,
The
of course.
women were pretty confident that there was a plan, and okay, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like we rocked up and we're like, just fingers crossed, hope everything's all right.
Yeah.
We'd really worked with the police, and we have a lot of experience working with the police. And what we do when we work with the police is we send clips of when it's gone wrong. We send clips of when the police have let people get too close and the violence that's occurred. And I want people to understand this is a group of women that gather in a place to speak. We are not a protest. We're not going. I don't ever go to pride events and so on and say, men can't be women. I'm just creating the whole job of Let Women Speak. The reason we do it is we create an environment in which women can come and say the things that in other places they are no longer free to say and must talk about.
So it's like it's almost like a symbolic. What you're doing is just making the statement that this is a space because so many other spaces are being denied.
Yeah. Look, it's not like we don't know that trans activists will come out. And often what they do when they come out is they provide energy, so that's quite good, and interest. So their behavior is always so bad that people that have no idea of the issue look and go, I wonder what that is. And then they find out it's a group of middle-aged women trying to speak about not wanting penises in our spaces. And it's a group of young people, often quite rabid, trying to stop us from talking. So they do serve a purpose, but maybe a bit too much in Auckland. So I get to the edge.
Sorry, Kelly. How many women were there speaking? Like, there
Well,
wasn't a
it's however many turn up. So there are
mm,
probably 30, 40. I mean, you've got to be quite brave.
yeah,
Your employer in New Zealand, if your employer sees you, you might lose your job. If you're a teacher, you know, you might lose your job. If you work in
that
healthcare,
sort of yeah, definitely
council,
that sort of profession, yeah.
yeah.
Mm,
Or even if you don't, even if you work for like the local supermarket and they've decided, I don't know what the law is in New Zealand, but you can kind of get rid of people over here if they bring the company into disrepute. And because that's such a vague thing, you can sort of say, well, you were seen at this thing and those people are accused of this, and therefore you've brought us into disrepute. Bye bye.
mm.
So I think employers can do that and do that and have done that. Um,
Well,
so I
even if they're not successful, the process is a form of punishment, isn't it?
yeah.
Just being dragged through that is unpleasant enough.
Yeah, well, I've decided, 'cause, I've been doing this quite a long time now. The process is a punishment, and then the solution is the process, which never actually reaches a solution. Like, when you're offered something, I've been dealing with the police for the longest of times, um, and they'll basically say, "Oh, you've got an issue with this. Well, you can complain." And then you complain, and then you get through to the process, and it goes on, and it takes a stupid amount of time. And at the end of it, they say, "Okay, well, we will reflect." And you're like, "Well, there's no solution." So the process is the punishment, but sometimes the process is the process is the process is the process. And there's rarely a solution. So when I get to the edge, so as we're driving through, I sort of drop down in the back of a car so I can't be seen, and I hear someone say, "Oh my god, I think I just saw her," and I assumed that might have been a supporter. Right, actually, in retrospect, I don't think it was. And then I walk through this crowd of people, expecting at the end of this crowd of people are some police around the rotunda. So just really, when I got to the middle, I couldn't believe it. So I'd been punched a few times and kicked a few times, like walking through this crowd of people with a couple of security. And then we get in the middle, and these people are nuts. And I don't want to exaggerate because I'm not very good with how many people were in that crowd, but I don't think I'd be exaggerating if I said there were a couple of thousand people there.
A lot of
And
people were there. A lot of
AI
people were there.
yeah.
Yeah.
The whole park
Because
was
there were
full.
all the people where you were, but then there was like a whole lot of people that just continued right, almost filled the park, didn't it?
Yes. Yeah, it did. Yeah. Um, and the police had made no contingency plans. There was no escape. There was no safe passage. They'd done none of this. I mean, maybe the plan was that I wouldn't be able to get in, and so we'd have to cancel. I don't know what their plan was, and I think they've been very
It, it,
dishonest in any of our
it was
investments.
very, it was rare. This was rare. Like we were all taken aback by this because we don't really see scenes like this in New Zealand. It was very odd. Like
Yeah, and
some of
against
the
women.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I've met some Kiwis a long time ago, and I have to say, I didn't think progressive was a word that I'd associate with um, men from New Zealand. But then my experience of those men was like 20, 30 years ago. So your country's obviously changed quite some. Quite some. But it feels like you skipped a very important bit in the middle, a bit like the Aussies. You sort of there's a bit in the middle where that women had some sort of chance of equality, and I think you just dive straight past that stage into men can be women. Anyway, I won't denigrate the lovely people of New Zealand because I think most people aren't like that, but you do have an authoritarian elite, and they're very well connected, and they're very, very well funded, probably from foreign money. Um, but anyway, I digress. So we get into the centre, and we're all a bit aghast. And then this man, who I think he's still in your country. I think he was a refugee or something, and he was or asylum seeker.
Full disclosure here, I actually know the person.
Do you?
I do because they're in the Jewish community. Um, uh, refers to themselves as Elena. intersex. Quite
Is he
disturbed.
intersex? I don't think he is intersex.
No, I'm pretty sure. I won't say how I know.
Okay.
No,
Well, maybe, but he's still male, and I think, like, intersex is a misunderstood that it's not a third sex. You're just a male with, developmental issues with your reproductive, organs, or you're female with reproductive issues, but,
yeah,
you know
the intersex do get appropriated in this debate a bit in a very misleading way, really. It's the whole, well, of course it's a spectrum because we have intersex, but that's not really what's going on there. It's a very specific condition. It's not proof of a spectrum
It's
or
like saying we sometimes have one leg just because some people have one leg. It's like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
um, so he then, pours tomato, I think it's sauce actually, but we always call it soup because that's much better for merchandising, and, the Campbell soup tin that I then made was just beautiful, with, like, posies. I got anyway, I've got one in this office. So, he poured some soup on me, and that really livens the crowd.
yeah.
Um, and they go a bit nuts then, and they start pushing the barriers, and it
Mm.
all kicks off. That's kind of the ignition for what then turns into a very, very dangerous, situation.
Well, the image I have in my head that, and I may even pull out this because it's all filmed, obviously. Was a young man. He would have been about 22, 23 or something. Quite a muscular guy. Just sort of throwing the fence down and sort of moving. You know what I mean? And pushing forward.
Mm.
And seeing that, I thought, you're doing that towards women, man.
Yeah.
It's like, what's with the big tough guy routine? You're not walking into a pub to sort someone out. It was very bizarre. Like it was, people seem to go completely feral.
Yeah. Well, that's a mob, isn't it? I think that's what happens with crowds, that, the football chants and stuff, like, people just become this organism that sort of acts as one, and
But sorry, but back to Elena, who I know. Elena has spoken to me and said things like, "They want to kill us all. There's a genocide. That's the kind of language." I think Elena probably has a few issues, but people have been using this kind of language for a long time, and it's dehumanizing all the women that are looking for, that just want to stand up for themselves. It's almost it's like Jews after October the 7th. Call them genocidal, call them this. If you honestly believe someone is genocidal, you can kind of do anything with them.
even, like, silence is violence. Even if you don't speak, apparently, that's an act of violence. Like, they are a cult, and that's what cults do. They don't need reason, they just need emotion, and, I genuinely have no sympathy whatsoever for his position, because what he did that day caused, there was a woman in her late 60s who got a full punch straight in the face from a young
Oh,
man,
yeah, that was insane. That was
and he didn't
completely
even get
insane.
criminalized for it, which is there's a
No, he
there's
got
go on.
permanent name suppression, I think. Was there conviction or a discharge? But there was definitely permanent name suppression. I think that's what really racked up a lot of people here. It's like, if you're going to do something like that, people should know who you are, because that's deranged.
Why
That's
can't you why
completely unhinged.
is that? Why should you surely part of the punishment for committing really antisocial violent crimes is that everybody in society gets to look upon you with the eyes of knowing that what you've done. Surely that's part of the if we don't have shame, then,
Mm.
we don't really have much order, 'cause
Yeah.
what's gonna stop him doing it again? Like, he needs to be humiliated, embarrassed, but anyway, that's another issue, because I think right across the West, we have got a very, very weird thing going on in our legal systems, which seem to kind of almost think the victims are the perpetrators and the perpetrators are deserving of our pity. And I
That's
don't
been going on for about 30 years, I think.
it's terrible.
Mm,
It's terrible.
yeah.
Bring back something. Discipline would be nice. So I'm in the middle. I've got this soup or sauce, and the crowd's going nuts, and they're starting coming forward, and all of the women at the rotunda are calling the police because the police are nowhere. We don't know where the police are. They're nowhere. So they're all calling the police, and the police aren't coming. And then the security sends one of their people out to ask for the help for the police, and that person comes back. And then the immortal words of the police aren't coming. Like the security just says to me, the police aren't coming. We're
Oh,
gonna
that's right. They remained on the outside, didn't they? And
Yeah.
they wouldn't get, that is really, really bad. Yeah.
And I don't think if you were dealing with football hooligans, right? And then that was gonna put officers in danger, which it could. If you had two warring I don't know if you have football hooliganism in New Zealand, but
No, strangely, like rugby's a way more violent game, but everyone's just so docile when they watch.
it's 'cause of violence. Like the aggression's on the pitch, isn't it? That everybody
Mm.
else doesn't need to, but I think football for the working class men over here became there was a bit of hooliganism.
Tribal. They got very, very tribal. Yeah.
I
Mm.
mean, I'm not an advocate of violence, but I do wonder what the recession of football hooliganism has done for the working classes. I do wonder whether that's a consequence, right? That's a consequence. If you go out and you throw a punch at a football match and then you get one back, that's a totally other
Well,
issue.
I was brought up in one of our most working class neighborhoods, and yeah, that's something that I'm pretty familiar with.
Mm.
Like we didn't really need free speech laws because if you overstep the mark, you'd learn pretty quickly.
Yeah, right. And
Mm.
also, I was having this conversation the other day. Like, I haven't seen that many fights in my time, but I never saw anyone get their head stamped on or smashed into a wall. I never saw anybody repeatedly punch someone again, 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 again in the face, or when that person stopped,
When they
like the
were
fight.
unconscious, yeah,
Whereas you see stuff online now, and it's animalistic and feral, where
yeah,
the violence is mad. The violence is I'm gonna kill you, you know?
yeah, yeah.
So these people start like there's lots of Posie. Is it Posie Parker? You can't hide. You've got Nazis on your side. There's loads of stomp on a
Mm.
turf. There's all like quite a lot of violent imagery on the signs. The be kind, sort of be kind
The Be
images.
Kind crowd.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
And he says, "Oh, the police aren't coming." And I think at that point, I just thought, oh my God. Okay.
How do we get out of here?
And so they have a talk, and then he says, "Right, what we're going to do?" Because I'm the target. Like, obviously, we know that the other women were targets, and there's some women that actually have PTSD from that day who attended, who still just and I think that was made a lot worse by the focus being on me. For some of those women, not only did they get traumatized, surrounded, assaulted, like physically and otherwise assaulted, um, that at the end the focus was, "Oh my gosh, what happened to Kellie-Jay Keen?" It wasn't, um, it wasn't about those individual women, and I think that's probably got hurt quite a lot. But
Well,
be
even in
part
the I don't know if you sort of were able to follow it from back in the UK, but the elderly woman that was attacked, like slugged in the face repetitively by this young man, um, on social media and everything, the left were dragging her. They were going, "Oh, look at it again. She sort of pushes him." She could have pushed him all she wanted. She
she
was,
wasn't
and,
not got any contact with her grandkids, or she's not a very good mum, or something like that, wasn't it? It's
yeah,
horrible.
there was that. There was that. There was like, "Oh, she's fallen out with one of her grandkids." It's like, you pricks. I'm sorry. I mean,
Yeah, well,
that's
she
just
deserved
disgusting.
a cunt, 'cause, once she cut in line. So, clearly. She didn't pay a bus fare back in the 1980s, so fair game.
Mm.
And so eventually what happened is they locked arms around me, and then we escaped, and
This was the few security guards that were with you. They're the
yeah.
ones that yeah.
Yeah, and
Mm.
some of the women. So some of the women that
Okay.
were stewards or marshals, of the event,
Mm,
they
mm.
also did it, and, you see on the video, you see a man trying to pull one of the women to the floor, and at one point, the crowd sort of surged, and I felt myself go to about 45 degrees, really start going and having no control of it, just your feet just begin to leave the floor, and I just thought, if I hit the floor, I'm not gonna get up. Now, that's not necessarily because the people that are about to stomp me to death wanna kill me, um,
Mm.
but that is what happens if you hit the floor in a crowd and it's a rabid mob
Yeah.
of people. Um, so I just thought, oh my god, if I hit the floor, I'm not gonna get up. And I've never been in moments like I've had babies, and um, I I was in a very kind of a dangerous situation in one of my having one of my kids. I've got 4, but I have never been in a situation where you get to the bare humanity of survival, which is one foot in front of the other, and that's it. That's all you're doing, is you just know where you have to be, and you're just going one step in front of the other, and yet that foot has to land on the floor. Um, and I don't even know if you don't you kind of don't really hear what's going on around you. You can hear the screaming, and you can hear the odd voice, but you're not sort of there's no time for conscious sort of conversations in your own head.
Yeah, real reflection.
Yeah,
And I guess you're just trusting the your guides to get you to, because you wouldn't even know where the entrance or exit
yeah.
was at that point. I mean, it's a foreign place too.
Well, because 'cause I'm also 5'1", so most people
Yeah,
around me are, like, quite a lot taller. So I'm just
yeah.
in the middle, and we're just stepping forward, and then I see a bench coming, and then I turn into one of the seagulls from, Finding Nemo. I'm like, Mind," is what I'm saying. I don't even know if the key if you, like, say mind out, but I'm going, "Mind, mind, 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 mind," like this, and I just sound like one of the seagulls, and at that point, I think we then see the police, who then sort of gather around me and get me to a car. Um, and I don't think they'd ever seen anything like it either, the police officers. And then they get me in
Mm.
a car, and I think I do say at that point, I think it's sort of I do sound quite distressed. And I say, "Oh my god, I thought I thought they were gonna crush us. I thought they were gonna crush us to death." And then I thought, because 'cause I've seen it in movies, I thought the crowd were gonna tip the car. Like, I just really had visions of, "Oh, I'm okay. Oh, maybe I'm not okay." And then they take us to the nearest police station, um, and then I have a couple of officers guarding me, and they're the only ones that know I'm there, aside from the commanding officer. Um, and I believe, and I'm happy for the police to correct me, but I believe in the chain of command from them to the chief, and somewhere in the organization of the police is what I would call a troon, a man who claims to be a woman, who's rather well known in New Zealand, and I think he had something to do with how we were treated. And I think that's what's happened with loads of police forces, is that we women, for daring to speak, are seen as the aggressors, just by virtue of us not thinking that women can have penises. We're the aggressors. So whatever happens is an equal, if not absolutely expected, response to our terrible views. And I think that's how we were treated on that day. We weren't seen as women trying to speak in a park. We were seen as
As
evil,
provocateurs.
nasty people.
There was a cartoon, I don't know whether anyone showed this to
I
you.
did, yeah, where I look
You
like
s
the queen.
well,
Well,
yeah,
that's me.
and you're you're small there, and there's this big male hand
Yeah, but
pointing
it's
it.
supposed to be that famous. Is it supposed to be that famous the famous man who calls himself a woman who's sort of revered in your culture?
Oh, Georgina Bayer.
Think so. I might be
Yeah, I knew Georgina.
I think it might be him. I think it might be his hand. But anyway, carry on.
Was that with the? Yeah, well, in the Georgina was interesting. Georgina thought that Speak Up for Women needed to be heard, and ended up withdrawing from society because the younger activists just hounded her,
Yeah.
to death, and so and that was a real shame. But very much a classic lefty, very free speechy, all of that stuff. I had some, good talk, long lunches, but the interesting thing about that cartoon is that the artist clearly thought it was saying we all got together and created this big fist to teach you a lesson, but I looked at it and read misogyny,
Yeah. Big
a
man's
woman
hands
wanted
have
to
that
speak and a
tiny thing
big
to shut up.
male hand just went, you're out of here.
Mm.
That
Very,
was
very interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Perfect. I mean,
And
it was a
mm,
perfect. He didn't know that what he was drawing, obviously, but it was it summed
yeah.
up the event perfectly.
So I mean, I still can't get over though at Albert Park that because you see, you were talking about the soccer hooligans. It's like, hey, if there's going to be a big fight and you're gonna have some people hurt and everything, but the stakes being all of these men, because a lot of them were just young men. They weren't
Yes.
even trans men. They were
Mm.
just men. Like
Very
the,
angry at their mums.
yeah, something was going on. The police should have got involved. I mean, we made we were releasing statements and everything at the time because it was just shoddy. It was just terrible. I mean, if something really, I mean, if you had been grievously hurt, then I mean that would have been just. But like so you leave the next that you go straight to the airport pretty much, didn't you?
I was in the police station for about 6 hours. Um, and somebody went back to my hotel and got my stuff. Um,
You
and
just made the call very quickly, did you? Oh, I'm getting out of here.
my husband was watching it from England. So
Oh yeah. Oh man.
yeah. I got a very nice flight home. I flew first class with Emirates. It's the nicest flight I've ever taken. I felt it was well deserved. But you can have a shower on those planes,
Really?
Yeah. You go upstairs. So I went upstairs and I had a suite, which is like 3 windows. You had a little bar that you press the button and the bar comes up.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, well, it was one of the only flights you could get, and it was quick. I didn't really
Mm.
wanna spend another night in your lovely country. I wanted to go.
Mm.
I felt I was under I mean, I don't know, do all your police armed? Because the people that were with me were armed. Um,
They can be. We don't have a big gun culture in the police, but I mean, that when need
I had
be, they
armed
can be. Yeah.
protection, and
Mm.
I had an escort, a police escort to the airport. Then I was at the police station at the airport, and then I had police escort to the lounge where they stayed with me until they said, "We're gonna stay with you until that plane takes off, and we know you're on
W-
it."
Well, they got their SHIT together then, didn't they? Not in the park, but
Well,
afterwards.
one of the police officers who was female told me that, she said, "Men just don't get it." And your police station at the time, or building a new police station maybe, um,
Mm.
was having a unisex changing room for all the police. And she had to fight tooth and nail to get an area that could be curtained off or door shut or something, but I don't think it locked, for her to be able to change.
Mm.
So, I mean, if your police don't look after their own officers, they're not gonna look after anyone else, are they? And this is often because you'll get
Mm.
one kind of zealot. Once you've got one zealot um, in anywhere, you make it really difficult for rational, normal people to have conversations. I mean, it's just the way it is.
And it really does become a barrier between, the people on the ground and the managerial classes. Like, I think a lot of this censorship is about sort of soloing off the classes, actually.
Yeah.
Do you have the right beliefs? Okay, well, you can join us. You don't have the right beliefs? Well, you stay over there, Like, that's what I think it's actually quite a class battle.
Yeah. And people
And
are very nice and polite, aren't they? So they don't I'm not I'm very polite. I've got good manners, but I don't mind making people feel really uncomfortable. So I went to a meeting, I was invited actually to a meeting at the NMC, which is the Nursing and Midwifery Council. Um, and they just wanted to do a number on me, pretending that they're much better with biological sex than they really are. And so I went to this meeting, and as I walk in, they did this thing where it was a massive table, and there was one person one end. So I was sat in the middle, one person one end, one person the other end, and one person opposite. It was a real like, what are you doing, ladies? Because I know straight away. I'm thinking, oh, this is your strategy, is it? One of them's wearing a pride lanyard, and the other one is wearing the biggest lanyard I've ever seen. Like, it's twice the width and twice as thick. And she's wearing these two lanyards, and one's like trans rights and human rights, and the other one's a pride thing. And so we sat, and everyone's introduced, and I just look at her and I say, what are you wearing? And she's like, and I said, no, what are you're wearing it for a reason. Why are you wearing it? And she says, I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Don't worry.
She says, oh, because, I want people to feel included. And I said, well, it feels like I'm not included. Because when you wear that, you basically say that you don't care about women-only spaces. So why can't you just come to work and do your job? I mean, do people think you're a homophobe? And she said, no. And I said, well, then you don't need to say that you're not, do you? Because this lady opposite, so there's a woman called Tracy. I said, Tracy opposite, she's not wearing any lanyards, and I don't think that she's a homophobe. I don't think she's a terrible human being who doesn't believe that people should have rights because she's not wearing it on a lanyard. So it just takes that one trans rights and human rights lanyard person to go in any meeting, and then maybe there's a woman in the meeting who wants to say, actually, I'm really not comfortable that we switched our toilets into unisex because there's trans rights and human rights. And so you know that you can't have a equal conversation.
Well, we had a case, and there would be plenty of cases like this. I'm sure that the Free Speech Union in the UK would have had them, where there was a workshop. Some gender activists were coming in to workshop with everyone there, and then one of the women was like, "Oh, I got a question." It's like, "No questions." And it's like, "No, I got some questions. Wanted to ask," and then so asked a few questions, and stopped the person a bit, and then afterwards it's like, up to the office. What were you doing? Why were you asking questions? That's not good. And got a slap on the hand. So we got involved in that. We sent someone to the to the meeting that they had, the second meeting they had, to say, what's going on here? What's the problem? And we've been quite effective, because it's almost like you're bringing your mum to school. Like someone from the Free Speech Union turns up. It can be like, oh, it's too much. This is going to be more trouble than it's worth. It'll end up in the paper.
Is they're used to saying something and everyone being afraid. And I think that's all it takes for cult-like behavior to work. You've just got to be afraid. And if you're no longer afraid, if enough people in New Zealand are no longer afraid, or maybe there's a lot of conflict-averse people, and if you stop being like that, then people stop pushing you around. But you have to stand up for your rights, otherwise you just lose them.
So what I find interesting about what happened in Albert Park, or one element of it, is that, like, I've in my head, like when it comes to protesters, I've had this debate with another council member actually. He was saying that if your protest should try to persuade, so we should maybe we can shut down protests that's just going to be disruptive for no reason. And the example he had was like an Anzac Day, fallen soldiers, someone just, blowing kazoos and whistles just to drown everything out. I said to him, my reply was like, okay, if that happens, it's awful. They ruin the day, but we know exactly who they are at that point. We know how low that we know who they are. If we're too prescriptive with protest, then we might not see the true colors. And I think that in Albert Park, we saw a lot of true colors.
Yeah.
And I think globally, I mean, Megyn Kelly and all sorts of people saw this. It was very embarrassing for the country. And I think people started to go, hang on, what's all this about?
Yeah.
What happened here? So do you think did you feel a tonal shift, like in the work you do, or like what impact do you think it had ultimately?
Well, I think, I mean, a lot of things happened that year. I also broke the spell in the United States. You'll note I'm very modest. I also broke the spell in the United States because I went to the Leah Thomas meet and I shouted, "He's a man." And I went viral a couple of times. I also did this thing where somebody asked me a question. She said, "Oh, are you a biologist?" And I said, "Oh, I'm not a vet, but I know what a dog is." Was that same year? I think that was all the same year. So anyway, um, anything that goes from silence to conversation is a good thing. And in fact, I met I don't know whether he was Australian or New Zealand and had lived in whichever way round, but he was now living in a local city. And he had watched some of the footage from what happened in Australia when I was accused of being a Nazi. And he was like, hang on a minute. And so we looked into it. So even the most terrible story about me or the women has the capacity to go from silence to conversation. And that's all I've ever thought my role is. Like it's to say the unsayable. That's essentially what I can do really rather well. But it's also telling women that they have a right to speak about themselves. Like we don't all have to, in order to have conversations about women's rights, we don't have to sit in a hall and listen to a few dry speakers who happen to have written an article or published a book, because they are not more expert on an average woman's life than the average woman. So I think it's like that those events have their place. And clearly I'm now just sitting here on a podcast. Those events definitely have their place. But I think that the beauty about Let Women Speak is we are just, I was a stay-at-home mum of 4 kids. And my youngest was 7 or 8 when I started doing this. And I just thought that women should come and speak, that we would create this space for women to speak. So back to your question. What happened in New Zealand, I think, had shockwaves throughout the globe. As you rightly say, it was covered. It was covered in loads of places. It showed trans activists. It was the best example of trans activist extreme Antifa type behavior. Clearly, they've got some real issues with that sort of thing in Portland and in some states in America. But I think probably New Zealand were quite shocked. I mean, what I do know actually is I was the most Googled person in New Zealand in that year. I think I beat Andrew Tate. So,
But see, the interesting thing about that too is that if the plan was to silence you, see, if they'd just gone, oh, I don't like that person, she's going to have a little talk in the park, let's go nowhere near her, let's pretend she doesn't exist. If they'd done that, what would have happened? Like they actually gave you a massive megaphone.
yes. Yeah, they did. Do you think so? I know that a lot of people knew about it in New Zealand, but I listened to a few. There's a one of my favorite things to listen to is the Jay and Dunk Rock Drive show. I don't even know if it's big in New Zealand, but they're just blokes. They're blokey blokes.
It's a Kiwi one, is it?
Yeah. It's called the Rock
Oh,
Drive
okay.
Show or something.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
and my husband and I, sometimes when we go, if it's been a bit of a long day, we'll go to bed and we'll watch what we call funny things, and they are like usually the top of the list. But they are proper key. They are so New Zealand. They're just and they say they say something about up the wires or something. I don't know. Anyway, they're just
Oh,
brilliant.
up the wires. That's the Warriors. That's our rugby league team.
Okay. And they also
The
say, just
Warriors.
get on
We
with
call
it,
the
eh?
Warriors the Wires. Up the
Yeah,
wires. Yeah.
that's what they
No,
say.
no.
And then
I'm a
and
leaguey.
oh, that's so brilliant. And they also say, just get on with it, eh? But anyway, well, it's a great export. If you're not listening to it, I mean, maybe I'm just revealed my sense of humor, but it's definitely that. So I wonder if it reached those people, like not those specific people, but I wonder if it reached like the men that watch rugby league, and you know,
Oh, they would have been appalled.
do you think it reached everyone? And do you think it genuinely reached everywhere, or do you think it's still a lot?
I think it did reach a lot of people, but this is, I think most men would have been appalled by what they saw. Completely appalled. I mean, this was a very specific. I mean, the young kid that hit the elderly woman. I mean, who is that person? I mean, that's not a normal person.
No.
I don't know what what his story is, because we're not allowed to know. But I mean, that was just absolutely deranged. I mean, if that whole thing had happened in a park in South Auckland, which is the working class neighborhood, he doesn't get out of that park. That kid
Right.
doesn't get out of that park. He would have been knocked around, and this is actually the multicultural neighborhoods I'm talking about. Samoans, Tongans, Maori. You never would have got out of that park if someone had
Yeah,
seen
some
him
of
do that.
them were a different event, weren't they? Just up the road.
Oh,
There was
yeah.
another
Oh, you were
event.
talking about Brian Tamaki and all
Yeah,
those guys. Yeah, they were around.
yeah.
Yeah, he's a hard case. Yeah. He's not from where I'm from, but his church is out there and he gets a lot of stick. He's a provocateur, but complex as well, because is a lot of guys come out of gang life to get into his church and things like that.
No, I've met them.
Um,
I've met quite a few of them
oh,
because they
okay.
came to
Oh,
Unite
because they
Kingdom.
went over, didn't they?
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
I hung out with Hannah for the day, and I met these men that feel like they owe him their lives, that
Mm,
just turned them around. And maybe he's a related figure would be Tommy Robinson over here. Um,
mm.
and I recently so I went to that because I don't do guilt by association. Nobody's gonna tell me who I can speak to about anything at any point, and if you
It gets used very, very cynically. Like, there's a reporter here, a journalist who's very he's very in the opposite camp, and he was going on and on and on about the fact that those Nazis were there at the Melbourne event, and it's like it was clear that they weren't
Yes.
connected to everyone there, but it didn't matter.
No.
But of course now he's supporting the boycott of the Adelaide Festival because that Hamas supporter was disinvited. I mean, he was fine with that.
Oh, yeah,
I
of
mean, the
course.
double standards are just crazy.
But so I met this I won't name him because I really do respect him, and he's covered and broke a story that is so massively important and great work. So I won't name and shame. But I met him and he was like, "Oh, I was so heartbroken that you went to the Tommy Robinson rally." And I said to him, and I think it's the same as Brian Tamiki, um, like slightly different. So Brian, I think if he does this good work where he takes these broken men and fixes them, then you know he probably says some things that I don't agree with. I don't know, but on balance, will he have lived a good life? Well, yes. I suspect at the end, it all said and done, absolutely. He will have transformed the lives of those men who go on to have happy marriages and children and different values, and of course. And with Tommy Robinson, this guy was going, "Oh, he's done mortgage fraud and he's done this," and I said, "Look, if he's done anything remotely as bad as the things that he highlights, which is the mass rape of girls in this country for 70 years. Like the first girls were some of the Sikh girls, and the Sikh community sorted that out. But there have been mass kind of familial tribal networks of men who have all raped the same girls over the last 7 decades. If Tommy Robinson has done anything remotely as bad as that, I'm listening to your criticism of him.
Yeah.
But he hasn't. Like, no, nothing he's done is a minuscule amount as bad as the crimes that he highlights. So I'm just not going to listen to that. That's how they get you all the time. Is they destroy one
Yeah,
tiny element of your
it's
character and your whole message is gone.
that's right. I mean, with Brian, I mean, at his worst, he's doing the anti-immigrant thing. I've had taken issue with that, but you can actually talk to him one-on-one, and he's not an intimidating guy.
No.
He's very, very South Auckland when I sort of talk to him, and I'll just say I don't agree with that.
And he wouldn't
Apart
stop you
from that,
saying it, right? He doesn't want
no,
you not to say it. He's quite happy for you to say it. I think
no,
that's the
he's not
difference, isn't it?
intimidating. I don't find him intimidating at all, actually. He's quite matey, but and sort of, I mean, he's kind of a bit Wayne Newton with the pompadour and stuff, and he always looks the part, but there is a humility there too, which is quite interesting. But he's basically a very strong evangelical Christian. I mean, and we live next to people like that we have fundamental disagreements with all the time. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be. There's a sort of idea today that like everyone really we need to know all your values, and
Mm.
we need to be completely on board with all your values. That's never the way it's worked.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
stop agreeing with ideas and we agree with people. And I think we need to just
mm,
get back to agreeing with ideas. Um,
yeah,
and that's really badly missing. But I would say that I'm willing to speak to people who I completely disagree with. In fact, I really enjoy it. I quite like a meaty conversation where we have opposing views. And then you come to some consensus. And sometimes you get more entrenched because you've practiced your
mm.
argument, and sometimes you might change your mind a little bit, but
What
you
we
don't have
what,
a
what
hope.
I'm a screenwriter and a documentarian. I've done lots of documentary, and I've had to knock on some pretty tough doors, but I have to treat these people and I have no problem doing it. I got to meet them where they are
Yeah.
and get trust out of them and tell their story. Um, I have no problem with that. And I think it could be because of the background and where I was brought up and things like that. But no, there are a lot of people that's like they have to know exactly what do you believe? Okay, well, I can be your friend, I can't be your friend. I
Mm.
can work with you, I can't work with you. I just find that bizarre. And
Well, that's
so,
true. Go on, sorry.
well, it's just, I mean, what's the word I'm looking for that? It's just so um, snobby and privileged, and and what are you going to learn? Just by being around people that agree with you all the time. I mean, the people throw at Brian the whole, he's done quite well out of it. He's not short of a bob, right? So he's done well out of it. But again, it's like, is saving a family that were into drink and drugs and like kids being kicked around and abused by parents, like think about the worst, as bad as that stuff can get. If that becomes a fit, healthy family of 5, is that worth a Mercedes to save one family? Yeah, probably is, actually.
Yeah. And he probably
And
does
how
do it
many
as a
times has he
full-time
done it?
job. I mean, I don't know this. I don't know enough about him to sort of talk too much, but, um, I sell in order to fund my activism, I sell merchandise. And then people sort of say, but you get a t-shirt for that, right? You don't just give me money. And then because you have no right to tell me how to spend the money. What actually happens is it all goes back in and I do, I mean, I didn't pay for that flight when I flew home from New Zealand, my husband did, but I will have quite nice flights and I'll stay in hotels, because this is my full time and I don't really get a wage from it. But people have an issue with that. And I'm like, well, someone working full time is not going to do this. They're not.
Yeah.
So
No, you've got to
I
sustain
thought
yourself.
my job. But anyway,
Well,
I'm
well, they probably they wouldn't grasp the schedule you'd have and things like
yeah,
that. But
I'm driving. I'm
okay, well,
going
look,
to London soon and talking.
we've been talking a long time. Look, we can wrap up. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Free to Speak. If you have any questions or suggestions for the podcast at fsu.nz. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to Free to Speak. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and consider sharing the podcast with others. We release new episodes regularly, and subscribing is the easiest way to stay up to date. If you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, you can contact us at podcast@fsu.nz. If you want to find out more about the New Zealand Free Speech Union, visit fsu.nz.